Oh, wow. So, how many people real quick have been to the swimming pool over at the Scottish Inn? Not very many people. How many people have been in a pool, period? How many people have ever been in a swimming pool? Yeah, all right. So, let me ask you a question, like, how many laps do you think you could pull off in a pool? How many laps? Joe, how many laps do you think you could knock out in a pool?
47.
47. All right, now, by show of hands, how many of y'all think that Joe is lying in church right now? Yeah. All right, yeah. So, Brandon, how many laps do you think you could knock out in the pool, man? You don't know? 10? Wow. Hey, isn't this cool? We got the kids in church right now again for the second week. Hey, how many of y'all got the paper? How many of y'all got a paper? Yeah? All right. Look, if you have a paper, who is preaching is really not that important, but you can put my name down there anyway. It's Clint. C-L-I-N-T, right? How many of y'all know what today's date is? What's today's date, Brandon? Today is what? 9/1. 9/1. There it is. September the 1st. Man, that is awesome. That is awesome, man. Look, I encourage you guys to fill out your paper. And families, I want to tell you, man, the reason that we're giving our kids these papers really is because, man, we've got things in there like words that you may have heard that you don't know. Questions that you may have about what you heard today. What are some of the main points? What was the scripture reading? Stuff like that. And the purpose is this, so that you guys as a family can go back and talk about stuff with your kids. That's why we're doing this. So that you can come back and say, hey man, let me see your paper. Let me see what you drew. Let me see some of the words that you might not have known. And it's just a way for you guys to grow in fellowship and discipleship together as a family. Because too often, man, it's like we come to church and we do our thing and the kids do their thing, or the youth goes and they do their thing. But if we're going to be all about family, let's be all about family, right? And so if we're going to grow as a family in our churches together, then we need to grow as families in our homes together, right? So that's the reason that we're doing that, man. And I personally, man, I think it's exciting. I think it's exciting to see the young people in church, because that lets me know that the church is alive, right? That means that the church is alive. That means the church is growing. It's awesome. So, Brandon, how many laps did you say you could knock out, bud? 10? You think you could do 10? How many miles do you think, or how many laps do you think it takes to make a mile in a pool? Brandon, how many laps you think you got to swim to do a mile? You don't know? What do you think, Emma? How many laps to make a mile? She's thinking about it. Huh? 16? Man, it takes somewhere between 65 and 70 laps to make 1 mile in the average pool. Right? Can you imagine that? Could you imagine swimming that many laps in a pool? Joe thinks he says he knocks out like a little over a half a mile, right? He's man, you're in shape, dude, right? Huh? Yeah. So that's how many laps it takes to swim a mile. Now, can you imagine swimming that in the ocean? It's one thing to swim it in the pool, right? You swim it in the pool and you got the side to hold on to. You can stop if you get tired, right? Whatever. But imagine swimming a mile in the ocean, right? Yeah, I'm not doing it either. Now imagine swimming 21 miles in the ocean. 21 miles. See, it's in the ocean that you got to worry about things like shark and jellyfish. So distant swimmers in the ocean, they have to deal with that. A lot of times when they come out of the water, they're all scarred up because of some of the stuff that they had to swim through. 21 miles in the ocean. I'm going to tell y'all about a lady today. Her name is Florence Chadwick. Actually was. She passed away. Florence Chadwick, on the 4th of July in 1952, when she was 34 years old, she did just that. She decided what she was going to do was swim from Catalina Island to the coast of California. And the distance was 21 miles. And you would think, man, this is nuts. Why in the world would this woman do this, right? But the deal is she's been swimming distance her whole life. Some things about her real quick is that she first started swimming competition when she was 6 years old. When she was 11 years old, she won first place in a 6-mile race. She swam 6 miles when she was 11 years old. When she was 13, she placed second place in nationals. In 1936, she would have made the Olympic team, but at that time, there were no distance events for women. Everything was short, was a short swim, and she was a distance lady, right? That's what her thing was. And so for her, it really wasn't nothing. And really, in 1950, she swam the English Channel, which was 23 miles. She swam from France to England, 23 miles. Look, not only did she swim this, which is something that only 7% of the people that swim this even make it. Most people tap out, right? Only 7% make it. And she actually did it and beat the world record in swimming in 13 hours and 20 minutes. When she got to England, they asked her, like, how do you feel? She says, I feel fine. She said, as a matter of fact, I'm ready to go back. Right? Which was really something because no woman had ever swam the opposite direction before. It was one thing to swim from France to England, but it was something completely different to swim from England to France because the currents and the wind made it even more difficult. But she did it. She actually did it anyway. She went back and in 1951, she swam the opposite direction. And she did that and set another record. 16 hours and 22 minutes. Now here's something, guys, for your ego, right? Here's something for your ego. No woman had ever swam that back the other way. So that was a man's record that she beat. So here it is, July 4th, 1952. She says, I'm going to swim 21 miles from Catalina Island to the coast of California. Nothing. She'd done 23 miles twice, set a record both times. She'd been swimming all her life. The one thing that she didn't count on is this. It's foggy. The coast of California, the fog is so thick that you can't see your hand in front of your face sometimes. And so when she got in the water that day, she was swimming and the fog was so thick that she couldn't see anything in front of her. So every time she would raise up to try to see where she was going, she couldn't see anything. It was actually so thick that she couldn't even see the boats that were with her because when she swam, she had people in boats that would cheer her on. Their job was to encourage her. Their job was to chase shark away with rifles. Yeah, because this is how dangerous this is. So they would sit in there with rifles and shoot at the shark to keep the shark away. And she couldn't see them. That's how thick the fog was. Her mom was in a boat, her trainer was in a boat, and she just kept swimming, and she kept swimming, and she kept swimming, and she kept raising her head up and looking, and she kept dropping it back down and swimming some more. And then finally, when she was 15 hours and 55 minutes into the swim, she did something that she had never done in her entire life. You know what it was? She quit. She quit. She called out for the boats to come to her and to pull her out of the water. So just under 16 hours, she gave up. You know where she was when she gave up? You know where she was? She was a half a mile from the California coast. She was half a mile from the California coast. And she said, this was her statement. She said, look, I'm not excusing myself, but if I could have seen land, I know I could have made it. So my question is this: how many times do we let the fog in our life make us quit swimming? How often do we let the fog in our life keep us from swimming? How often do we give up because of what's in our life and keeping us from being able to see? I want to take you to a passage of scripture. It's Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 and 3. 1 through 3. It says, therefore, and I love this, therefore. Every time you see therefore in Scripture, you know what you should ask yourself? What's it there for? Anytime you see therefore in Scripture, you need to say, what's it there for? Go back. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Verse 2, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Verse 3, consider him who endured from sinners such hostility against himself, so that you may not grow weary or faint-hearted. Three verses of Scripture. And in these 3 verses of Scripture, I want to give you 3 takeaways. I want to give you 3 things that you can take away from these 3 verses of Scripture. Excuse me. One is this. We're surrounded. Look, this has happened. This is the first verse of chapter 12 of Hebrews, where it says, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings closely to us. Some parts say to throw off the sin that binds us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Right before this, in chapter 11, we have what's known to most Christians, and one of the things that they teach you when you go to seminary is chapter 11 is known as the Hall of Fame, or the Hall of Faith, right? It's the Hall of Famers of the Hall of Faith. That's what it is. And so it's the writer of Hebrews is going through this list in chapter 11, and he's saying, remember so-and-so, remember so-and-so, remember Gideon, remember Abraham, remember these people. And he's laying out example after example after example of people that persevered through their faith. And he says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, I want you to know right now that you are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. And it's not just the heroes of the faith that you see in Scripture. Look, you're surrounded by heroes right now. You're surrounded by heroes of the faith right now. Listen, Saturday, our youth was out here washing cars for Logan Malone. They raised $642. They came into it not knowing what they would make, not knowing what they might walk away from, but they knew that they had to do something. It was Dalton's idea to do it. An adult didn't even plant this idea. The Spirit did. And they showed up in faith, and they worked, and they walked away with $642. You know what that makes them? Heroes of the faith. That's what that makes them. Heroes of the faith. Every time that we go through something and we persevere, we become a great member of a great cloud of witnesses to someone else about how faith works. No matter what you're going through right now, you can just look to your left right now and look to your right. You're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. People that can encourage you. Why are we surrounded by people? And it's simple, because this word says that we have to throw off the sin that binds us, that we have to cast off the weight, because you can't swim with weights on. I don't know if you've ever tried it, but I'm telling you, you can't do it. Right? You can't do it. It's hard enough to swim in your blue jeans. I'm just saying. Look, if we're going to throw off the sin in our lives, we have to have help. We have to have people around us. We have to understand that we are surrounded by people that want to encourage us, that want to help us throw these things off. But let's just be honest, and I'm talking to myself right now. Sometimes instead of throwing off the stuff in our life, we like to flirt with it instead. Am I right? The Word says that we have to cast off our sin, but how often do we just decide to flirt with our sin instead? Huh? How often, guys, is it that we're going to look at a picture that ain't that bad, but ultimately we know where it's going to lead? Huh? We're going to flirt with the sin that entangles us. What do you think it's going to lead to? Look, if we're going to cast off the sin in our lives, those little white lies that turn into big lies, huh? That those little compromises that we talked about a month ago. If we're going to cast these things off, man, we need to dig in. We need to dig into our cloud of witnesses. We need to dig into the people in our lives that are going to hold us accountable. Maybe we need to throw away some things. Maybe we need to delete some stuff off our phones. Maybe we need to quit turning the TV to certain channels. Maybe we need to quit reading certain books. Maybe we need to start unplugging some things out of our lives. Because the Word says, cast off the sin that entangles you, the weight that's going to drag you down to the bottom. And it's okay because I've surrounded you with a great cloud of witnesses to help you do it. We're surrounded. The second thing I want you to see is this, and this one is the easiest one, but sometimes it's the hardest one to do, right? Look to Jesus. Look to Jesus. Verse 2 says, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith. Some verses says, fixing our eyes on Jesus, right? Fixing our eyes on Jesus. So the question is this, how much time do we spend focused on Jesus? How much of our spare time is spent focused on Jesus? Listen, can I tell you this? If you're in a situation right now and you can see no hope, you can see no way out, then I have to question, are you fixing your eyes on Jesus? Because He is our hope in every situation. If you can't find hope, maybe you're looking in the wrong direction. We're called to walk by faith and not by sight. And if our faith seems to fail, maybe we need to turn to what? To the author, to the perfecter, to the founder of our faith. That's who we need to turn to. That's who we need to fix our eyes on. But you know why we don't? You know why we don't do that? I'm going to tell you why we don't do that. It's because we're just like the Israelites. We like to stay more focused on the promise than we do on the promise maker. Listen, God knew that we had a tendency to do this, which is why when He brought them out of Israel, He gave them a cloud, or a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, so that they always had Him to fix their eyes on. During the day, they watched this cloud. During the night, they watched this pillar of fire, and they followed this, and they followed this, and they followed this. And when they took their eyes off of it, and they got more worried about the promise, what happened? They ended up wandering around in the desert, right? Just going to wander around. We like to spend too much of our time fixated on the promise instead of the promise maker. See, if we fix our eyes on Jesus, can I tell you, eventually we're just going to look and we're going to be standing right in the middle of the promise. In your marriage, if you will fix your eyes on Jesus, then all of a sudden, before you ever even realize it, you're going to be sitting right in the middle of the marriage that He promised you. If we, as a church, fix our eyes on Jesus, then one day we're just going to find ourselves in the promise of the church that He said that we could be. We have to learn to fix our eyes on the promise maker and let Him worry about the promise. We need to look to Jesus. The third thing is this. We find our fight in our focus. We find our fight in our focus. And what do I mean by that? It says this, consider Him who endured from sinners such hostility against Himself, so that you may not grow weary or faint-hearted. When we fix our eyes, when we fix our focus on Jesus, we get the fight that we need to get through our situation. That's what we get. And why? Because we get to see why He did what He did. Why did Jesus endure the hostility from sinners? It says it right here. Why? So that we might not grow faint-hearted or weary. He did it so that we could have the strength to keep swimming. He did it so that we could continue on in our situation, so that we could keep putting one foot in front of the other one. Listen, on that foggy morning In July, Florence lost a battle. But she returned to Catalina Island. She returned to Catalina Island 2 months later, and she did it. She made the swim. And this is what she says. It says she swam with her faith intact because she knew that her destination was there, even if she couldn't see it. See, if we focus more on the promise maker and less on the promise, then we know that the promise is there, whether we can see it or not. See, the one thing that is in every... Look, Jesus is in our situation. Jesus is in our situation. The end of your situation may not be evident to you. You might not be able to see it. But if you take the time, you can see Jesus in your situation. You'll be able to see Him in your marriage. You'll be able to see Him in your workplace. You'll be able to see Him. And He'll take you to the end of your situation. He'll take you to the end of that trial. He'll take you to the end of that season. She says she swam with her faith intact. She knew her destination was there even if she couldn't see it. Listen, can I promise you this? The Lord said what He brought you to, He'll see you through. Whether you can see it or not, the promise is there. Just watch the promise maker. Not only did she finish the swim, but check this out. She swam the swim in 13 hours, 47 minutes, and 55 seconds. Not only was she the first woman to make this swim, but she beat the men's record by over 2 hours. By over 2 hours. The first time she tried it, she gave up because she couldn't see. Because she let the fog just rip her faith to pieces. And almost 16 hours in, she tapped out. But whenever she stayed focused on what she knew could get her through, which is her faith, she made it in 13 hours. And 13 hours and 47 minutes. That's nuts, right? Can you imagine that? Listen, there's absolutely nothing that you cannot do if you stay focused on Jesus. There is absolutely nothing that He has called you to that He won't equip you to do. We find our fight in our focus. If you want to know how to fight through everything in your life, focus on Christ. That's where your fight comes from. Listen, somebody asked me one time, like, why don't you do the old traditional bow your head and close your eyes thing? And I'm going to tell you why I don't do that. I don't do that because I don't think that I'm the only person that needs to know who to pray for. That's why I do that. That's why I do that. Because I want all of us to be able to see who we need to lift up, who we need to encourage, who we need to embrace, because we're a family. Because we're a family and we need to know what we can. That's what it is. I don't need to be the only person that sees that someone needs prayer. We all need to be praying for each other regularly. And so I asked Larry and Mary to come and do an invitation. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to encourage you. If you, maybe there's something in your life that you need to throw away. Maybe there's something in your life that you need to get rid of. Maybe you just need to figure out how to shift your focus back to where your focus needs to be. I want you to know that this is open and that we want to pray for you. Maybe you want to find someone and bring them down here and ask them to pray for you. Look, maybe you've been sitting there and you're like, I don't know how to fix my eyes on Jesus because I don't even know who Jesus is. I hear you talking about some guy, but I really don't know him. I just want to encourage you to let's have that conversation. If you don't know Jesus Christ, man, don't walk out that door without knowing Him. Because I'm telling you, if you don't know Jesus, you have no hope. Your situation will overcome you. It will crush you. And it's only through a relationship with Him that we can make it from day to day to day. What's going to bring peace to the people of Odessa and Midland is not government help. It's not going to be gun control. It's not going to be any of that stuff. It's going to be people that have a relationship with Jesus Christ, that know how to comfort the way that they're supposed to be comforted. It's going to be people that have a relationship with Jesus Christ that are going to allow themselves to be comforted the way that they need to be comforted. Being a Christian does not mean that we get to live a pain-free existence. What it means is that at least we know that we have people that hurt with us, that we have people that want to help us, that we have people that love us, that we have people that encourage us, that we have people that are just going to hold us if we need to be held. Listen, we love you. We love you. We love this church. If you don't know Jesus Christ, man, we implore you, please let us have that conversation with you. So as they